Hey, look, it's the Kaiju Collector, yay!
Hey, everyone, Nate the Kaiju Collector, and today we will be taking a look at the Bandai Creations Gigan from Godzilla vs. Gigan. This figure was released all the way back in the year 2002, which makes this the earliest figure I own from Bandai Creations. And since then, the Showa era version of Gigan has seen multiple different interpretations from Bandai, whether it's from the Uematsu series or even SH Monsters. So, let's see if this version of Gigan is still good. Let's take a look by starting at this figure's box. Now, if you've seen any other Bandai Creations review I've done, you know the typical box it comes with. It's the standard red with the Millennium Godzilla shooting its atomic breath and the orange. It looks fantastic. On the back, you see all the other figures that was released at the time, so take a look at that. And that's pretty much it. Now that we're done with that, let's take a look at this figure's articulation. Gigan can rotate all the way around at the head here. His arms can rotate all the way around. Yes, both arms can do so. The legs can rotate all the way around, and this just might be on my copy, but the tail can move a little bit. I assume that the person who owned this before me broke the glue seal, so yeah. I really like Gigan's articulation. It's solid. It's exactly like any other Gigan figure, so 10 out of 10. And now on to painting and sculpting. In terms of colors, Gigan really only has 4 colors. He has a dark red for the visor, a dark green for the base color, a silver for all the claws and mandibles and whatever in the beak, and a gold for the scales and the fins here. So, yeah. And while it may not seem like a lot, it really depends on how the paint is applied, and on this figure, it's applied pretty well. So the first thing I have to point out in terms of the sculpt is Gigan's visor, because in my opinion, it's a bit too big. It looks fine from the side, but when you look at it up front here, it looks a bit goofy. But I like it. It gives a charm. The paint on Gigan's beak, his mandibles, and these frontal little spines here, they're very nicely applied. Maybe just a bit underpainted on the beak and the mandibles, but the spikes on the back of his head and neck are absolutely fantastic. Just look at all that detail. Ooh. Oh, he does not want to focus. Come on, focus. The details itself are nice. I like the scaling and the texturing here, especially the scaling on the neck here, which, by the way, fun fact, scales all throughout Gigan's body are, in fact, the scales reused from the Showa era King Ghidorah suit, which, that's one way to save money, I guess. Yeah, that skin texture will be all throughout the body. You see it on the arms, you see it on the legs here, and you get a bunch of wrinkles on the arms here. I actually really like that. And speaking of the arms, they're not the exact same pose. For example, this arm here is a lot more bent upwards, as you can see here, while this arm is more neutral, I guess. And the claws here do look a bit banged up here, but that's because I got it second hand, so that's probably why. But in general, the paint here is pretty nice. The second claw could use a little bit more painting, but, you know, that's fine. Gigan's legs are basically the same thing as his arms, except with these big kneecaps here, I guess. I don't know. I do prefer the way that the silver was painted on the feet here. It actually looks a lot nicer than on the claws, in my opinion. Gigan's tail is actually very nice. I like the scaling once again. You get some little spikes here on the tail, which, by the way, all of them are individually painted, which is absolutely fantastic. And then when you get to the middle of the tail, you get that skin texture that I mentioned earlier, all at the tip, which I'm not sure if that's accurate or not, because the Movie Monster series figure does not have that. So, at the bottom of Gigan's tail here, you get that King Ghidorah scaling all the way at the bottom, and it looks very, very nice. And speaking of the bottom, trademark and copyright 2002 Toho Ltd. and 2002 Bandai made in China. Now, the body here. It looks absolutely fantastic. I love the mix of the gold and the green and the silver. It's amazing. You get all that King Ghidorah scaling, you get some of this cross smooth detail, I don't know what that is. And then the buzzsaw here, it's fine, I guess. I mean, if you look closely, you can see the fact that some of the gold paint has gone onto the silver. That's a thing, yeah. Unfortunately, in my opinion, I think that the fins are probably the weakest part of the figure. Now, hear me out for a second, because if you look between the fins here, you get to actually see some detail here that might either be intentional or unintentional, I have no idea, but it's still nice that it's there. The problem is the actual fins itself basically have no detail and looks toyetic in my opinion. Something about it looks a bit weird. And I get that's Gigan's thing, but in this case, it just looks a bit lazy. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Pretty much in terms of Gigan's painting and sculpting, overall I'm giving him a solid 8 out of 10. The figure's paint, I think, is amazing. The sculpting is decent. There are some parts that look absolutely fantastic, and there's some parts that look a bit, okay. So, an 8 out of 10 will suffice for now. On to size and size comparisons. In terms of his height, Gigan is just over 6.5 inches tall. And in terms of his size comparisons, here he's compared to Bandai Creations King Ghidorah 2001, Bandai Creations Godzilla 1954, and Godzilla 2004. And that's pretty much it. Overall, I'm giving the Bandai Creations Gigan a solid 8.5 out of 10. There are some aspects of the figure I like, and some aspects of the figure I don't like. So, yeah, 8.5 out of 10 will do. This is the second to last video of the Bandai Creations Godzilla review collection or marathon, however you want to do it. And the next video will be the Bandai Creations King Ghidorah 2001. See you in the next video.